Sound! Right, I know in the last video I said that this video will all be about showing you how to score a goal, but before we do that, I kind of wanted to show you how to add backing tracks, how to add sound effects, and also how to add colliders around the pitch to stop the ball and the player running off the pitch, that is, because the camera actually stops. So we lose track of where the player and the ball is. So basically, we're getting rid of throw-ins, corners, goal kicks. We're just having the ball bouncing off the walls, as if it was an indoor football pitch type of thing. I've imported three sounds in, so my goal celebration, my kick sound effect, and a whistle. And the easiest thing to do in terms of adding like a sound, so for example, a whistle to start the game, is just to drag and drop it somewhere. Now it automatically appears on here. You won't actually see it during gameplay, but I kind of find it really annoying that everything piles up in the middle, so I just get it off there. Now, because it's selected, it's called whistle over there on the right hand side. You can see that it's got all these settings. So play on awake basically means play as soon as we press play, and I actually want that to happen in my whistle. So a whistle sounds. I can make it loop. I could mute it if I wanted to. I don't, so I don't see the point of that. And you can increase the volume and the priority and the pitch, and you can have a mess around these yourselves. But basically, when I press play now, what should happen is a whistle sound effect plays as soon as the game starts, almost to say kick off. There we go. So that bit's sorted. Right, now the kick bit. So I want every time my player comes in contact with the ball for a little kick noise to basically happen. Now I'll need to code this because I need to basically say when the player hits the ball, this should happen. So on our player movement script, we are going to be adding in something here called public audio source. Look at me typing in, and we're going to call it kicking and put a semicolon at the end. Now, what we're also going to do now, then, I've got a bit carried away with myself. I'm not actually going to do any more typing at this stage. We're going to bring something in from my text file, which is a procedure which basically says if you collide with something, then play something. And in this case, when we collide with something called the ball, which we'll need to have a look at now in a second as well. So underneath void start and void update, and basically these brackets here with the dotted lines say where they start and stop. So this stops here, and then I'm going to just paste this into this point, and like these lines will kind of fill in themselves. So the kick in dot play basically means that it will play this audio source called kick in. Now at this stage, we haven't kind of added a tag to our ball called ball, and we haven't actually told Unity what kicking is, but at least we've done the code inside of it for this point. So when we come back onto here, it'll have a little kind of like do what it does. Nothing much is going to change because um, nothing has actually been activated at this point. So we shouldn't have error messages. But what I will need to do, where it says player, I'll scroll down. It's now waiting for me to say what this kicking audio thing is. Now, you might want to think that I just literally drag that kicking sound effect to there, but it doesn't quite work that way. So what I actually need to do is add an empty, and I'm going to call it kick. I could call it kick in just for consistency purposes. And this kick sound effect I drag up into that then. So it appears on screen as well. So I'm just going to drag it off there. Now with this, I don't want it to play on awake. I don't want it to loop. And I don't want it to be as loud as the whistle. So I'm just going to drop down the volume so it's about 0.5. Now that might not be loud enough. I can just adjust that if I need to. So where we've got our player and where it's saying to us, where's it to what is kicking, then I'm literally just going to drag this across now, which has our sound effect attached to it, this sound effect, and I'm going to drop it into there. So basically what that should do now then with the code we just did, it should play it. Now every time we hit the ball. Now one of the issue is, like I said, on our codes, we've got this kind of tag called ball. It's basically saying when you hit the ball, then or hit something tagged with ball, then play that sound. Now at this point, yes, it's called ball, but the ball itself hasn't actually got, if I scroll back up to the top, a tag at all. It's untagged. So if I click on the drop down arrow for untag, there's all these ones which are made for us already, not actually relevant for what we want. So we're going to add a tag. We're going to call it, if you click on the plus sign, ball, and it has to be case sensitive, so capital B here like it is on the code. And I click back on the ball again because it does this annoying thing of actually not keeping it selected. And ball is now added to it, and then this should work. So basically everything's in place. So when we come in contact with something tagged with ball, then it should play this kicking sound effect, which is here. So when I press play, and it does what it's supposed to do. So it plays our sound effect, and now every time I touch the ball, it does a little kick-in sound effect. And you can see the camera is kind of working as well from previously. Now at this point, like I said, the ball will go off the pitch, and so will the player, and then I've lost kind of how I get the ball back on. So what we're going to do next is just move everything, well, move my view down a little bit, and we're going to add basically a wall across here then, which will be across the top touch line. So I'm going to add a 2D object, which is going to be a square, which will appear somewhere. I think it's because it's behind everything here. So the order in the layer on the sprite render, if I just chuck it to 5, there it is. And I'm now going to basically move this into the position I want it to go. So it's going to be right on the touch line. And I'm going to scale it. Well, actually, I can use the rectangle. Can I do it this way? Yeah, I can just drag it out this way here. So it's the entire width of the pitch. And we're not going to add a rigid body to it because it'll kind of give gravity. But what we are going to add is a box collider because it's the shape of a box using physics 2D box collider. And I don't think I need to do anything there. But the idea is now when the ball hits that, so let's see if it works first of all. Right, so let's kick the ball up to it. And what should happen is there we go. So the ball doesn't actually go past it, and nor can I as the player. Now, the reason why I disappear there is because my order in the layer is actually lower than the 5 I set for this. Now, I'm not going to need to change that at all, but we are going to have to need to look at something to make this ball bounce back in. So I'll actually do that quite quickly now as well. Now, but the first thing I want to sort out, obviously, we've got this big white wall, and it's called square. So let's call it what it should be called, which is top touch line. Should we call it top touch line? Just so we know what it's called in terms of over here on the left hand side. And where the color is, so this is on the sprite renderer for the top touch line. If I click on it and go down to this bottom line here, I can drop the opacity down to 0 so you can't see it at all. So basically you need to do the same now for the this part here, not the goal, this part there, and obviously the bottom touch line and this part here and this part there. So you'll have a pile of things then which have got that attached to it. But leave a gap for the goal because I'll be in the next video. Right, now the ball didn't bounce there, it just basically kind of like hit into it. So what we're going to need to do, down here in the assets here, if we right click and create a, God, what is that? 2D physics material 2D. And this appears here. Now you'll notice where it says friction 0.4, bounciness 0. But if I hit the bounciness up to 1, and maybe I could have given it a name, it doesn't really actually mean it at this stage. Now this material, I need to add to our top touch line. So where it says none physics material 2D, I drag that onto there. And what should happen is now, when I basically knock the ball into it, it should bounce back then. Now, if I wanted a player to bounce back, then I can add that material to it as well. But at this stage, it's just a ball I want to basically bounce. So if I give it a bit of a whack, there we go, and it bounces into it and comes off there, just like an indoor pitch. Now, there's a bit too much of a bounce there, in my opinion. So I would come and change it here back to a lower number, and then it'll automatically change on that as well. So then you add this material to all of the walls or colliders or squares you put around there, and then you're up and going. Right, next video will be how to score a goal.